All right, it's the top of the hour. Let's get started. I want to thank everyone for joining today's webinar focused on the Cultural Navigator. And specifically today, we're talking about driving usage of the Cultural Navigator inside your organization. Let me do a quick sound check with Lakeisha. Lakeisha, could you confirm that you can hear me? Or Louisa, my two colleagues?
Hi, Lynn. I can hear you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Hi, Lynn. I can hear you.
Excellent. Thanks, Louisa. Thanks, Lakeisha. All right, so quick introductions. We have myself on the line. My name is Lynn Putz. I'm the Director of Solutions for the organization that develops the Cultural Navigator called TMC. And I'm joined today by Louisa Ajami, who is our content editor for our online solutions development team, specifically focused on the Cultural Navigator. And Lakeisha Ward, of course, is our consistent producer for these sessions. Thanks for your consistency, Louisa and Lakeisha. I'm glad to be joined by you guys today. So a couple of housekeeping points before we get started in our webinar. And that is, in order to reduce background noise, during the presentation, all participants will be muted throughout the session. And you can type questions in the question box at any time, and the question box is on the lower right-hand side of your control panel in the GoToMeeting platform. We'll reserve about 30 minutes at the end of today's session for a question and answer period. So please go ahead and type your questions at any time into that box, and we will address those. If not during the session, we will address them at the end of the session. Today's session is being recorded, and after the webinar, we'll share the link with you, and they will be posted on our corporate website, tmcorp.com. And when we switch presenters, you may see a pause in the presentation, so please stick with us. All right, so our first polling question for you today is just to see who's on the line with us. And the question is, what is your organizational role? And we might have talent management with us today, organizational development, training professionals, or a business line leader. We may also have others, so if you choose other, please go ahead and type that into the chat box as well so we know who's on the line with us. All right, so wow, 100% in the training division within your organization. Thank you so much for that feedback. You know, we have the majority of our participants in these webinars are in the training division within their organization. So this is consistent. Thank you so much for that feedback. Appreciate it. Let's get to the agenda and really see what we're going to do throughout the session today. Our first focus is going to be on the method of learning called 70-20-10, and really that's about a division of learning methodologies that are applied at the organizational level. And the 70-20-10 refers to the percentage of that type of training method that is used across the organization. So we'll then specifically relate the Cultural Navigator to that 70-20-10 method of learning. Then we'll get into an orientation to the learning platform and how some of those elements then are leveraged into driving usage. We'll provide some strategies and some samples of how our clients across the world are using the different strategies in order to build usage within their organization of the Cultural Navigator. All right, and really let's start with the 70-20-10 concept. So 70%, according to the model here of learning, is done on the job, is most effectively achieved on the job. And the Cultural Navigator is really focused on allowing that just-in-time learning because our user interface is optimized for both on-the-go and the before-you-go learning. And so we specifically designed this homepage to be user-friendly and to be directly pointing users towards what they might think is some of the most important information for them to gain access to. The next component of this 70-20-10 rule is the 20% of learning that really focuses on informal learning. And that could be through knowledge transfer between peers. And the Cultural Navigator is specifically designed for that through what is shown here as the latest post. Thanks, Lakeisha. The latest post section where you can see what people within your own network are looking at, what they're recommending within the organizational structure of the Cultural Navigator, and through the network section as well. So you can network with other people within the Cultural Navigator, and they can connect with you and then recommend learning to you. And then the last point of the 70-20-10 rule is the 10%, which is considered more formal learning. And this would include classroom learning. And the Cultural Navigator is specifically designed to allow for classroom learning in a blended learning approach. And if you see on the middle of the example page here of the Cultural Navigator, those learning paths are specifically designed for a linear approach to learning. And it can be taken before a session or after a session. Okay, so let's do another poll here real quick, and really want to get an idea from you if your organization follows the 70-20-10 approach to learning. And if we could have you identify either yes or no, and then if you have any comments that you'd like to make, perhaps you follow a different approach to learning, go ahead and type that into the first of all, indicate other and then type it into the question box. Okay, interesting. Okay, so we have a majority that does follow the 70-20-10, but about a third present on the call do not follow 70-20-10. So I'd be really interested to hear what you do follow if you don't follow the 70-20-10 approach to learning. So would love for you to chat that into the question box and let us learn from you too. All right, so a couple of other elements that I'd like to give you an overview of before I hand it to Louisa and have her walk through some of the different elements inside the Cultural Navigator that help illustrate this. But a couple of stats for you, and really some of these stats are pivotal in communicating these numbers to your organization. If you look at the left-hand side here, the monthly stats as of July 2014 indicate that we had 154,000 page views. So people want to do what other people are doing. And inside your organization, you get the same level of analytics with the Snapshot usage report, which I'll give you an example of later. There were, in July 2014, 14,280 visitors. On average, 11 pages were visited per user, per actual visit. About 12 minutes was spent by each visitor inside the Cultural Navigator, and a little bit more than half of all the visitors to the Cultural Navigator were new. And so we have a lot of returning visitors to the Cultural Navigator, a little bit less than half. A couple of other numbers that might be compelling to you. We have 250,000 assessments in our database, and that grows every day. And approximately 5,000 COIs, or assessments, are completed each quarter. So it gives you an idea of the volume of activity that we manage inside the Cultural Navigator. A couple of other points that I think would be interesting for you and interesting elements for you to evangelize to others as well, and that is the different learning components that are most popular within the Cultural Navigator. If I could move that slide, there we go, thanks Lakeisha. We have a couple of different reveals here. So the most popular learning destinations include recorded Cultural Navigator overview, and a couple of other learning elements include the importance of self-awareness, which is an audio pod, And then the last is what is culture, and that's an e-learning module. And so we track those most important learning elements inside the Cultural Navigator and share those with you. What's most popular, what's trending within the learning platform, and how can you direct your users to what seems to be the most popular. And then we can move on to some of the core elements of the Cultural Navigator, especially if you have opportunities to present the Cultural Navigator inside of your organization. You want to be able to point out these elements very succinctly, and so let me help you do that. So we have as the first element that I want to point out are the latest posts, and this is what we call collaborative learning. And this is an opportunity, if you could advance the slide, Lakeisha. This is the opportunity for you to learn from others within your organization, and you can track what other people are doing and recommending at the organizational level. In addition to that, in the latest post sections, if you follow subject matter experts within your access to the Cultural Navigator, you have the opportunity to see those latest posts and to follow those postings. So you see at the top of this latest post section, Diana Anderson talked about the cost of sending an employee abroad. And so that's one of the latest subject matter expert posts. And you can actually click on that blue link in order to get there. The other element that I want to point out is Learning Paths, and Lakeisha, if you could forward that slide, just a few elements, that would be great, are the Learning Paths, and those are positioned right on your home page. And the opportunity then is for you to measure your learning and measure your progress towards the goal that you have of that learning. And so once you start an element of learning, specifically with the Learning Path technology that we have employed, your progress is tracked, and so you can always go into that, into your homepage of the Cultural Navigator and identify where you are in learning. And one of the elements of online learning is being able to measure progress, and we find that what is measured is actually done. And so if I was coming into my Cultural Navigator right now, I would look at what's highest percentage done, and I would try to complete that. Also up on top you see that there are 4 different elements of access inside the Cultural Navigator, and the top one is called Profile, and this is where you can set levels of privacy to an extensive level if you choose to restrict the privacy of your record within the Cultural Navigator, or if you choose to leave it open, it is by default open. And we work with clients all over the world, so we have to be extremely careful of that element of the Cultural Navigator, and so we pay special attention to that. Thank you, Lakeisha. So here on the Lynn's interest area, you can choose your own interests and make those shortcuts to learning. So that cuts through the data that's presented within the Cultural Navigator and gives you a very specific, targeted approach to the learning that's available on those specific topics. And you can pull 12 different topics and have those represented even on your home page. The last element that I want to make sure you are able to understand is the COI, and that is the industry-leading assessment that we have within the Cultural Navigator, and it's called the COI, the Cultural Orientations Indicator. It is comprised of 83 questions, and it's available in 12 different languages, and it renders, if we can move to the next slide, it renders a report based on a neutral framework for describing and understanding the cultural differences that you might have with others, you might have with different geographies that you might be working with, and really is an effective tool for not only developing self-awareness, but then again developing awareness of others and developing cultural competence on a pretty interesting and global basis. Moving on to the next element, I'll give you an example of what some of the linear pathing towards learning looks like. So this is a learning path, and you see that doing business in India is the learning path that we're looking at, and that's how it shows up on your home page. It's just an indicator that shows you that you're 33% of the way done. once you click on that bar, it takes you actually to the learning path. And so not only does it take you to the learning path, but it tells you where you left off. You see that with the begin button, that's where I left off in the last time that I was doing the doing this learning element. You can also plan your work by looking at the time estimates and how many people recommended that learning to you that are in your network. And one last thing is you can recommend this learning to your network by pushing on the recommend button. And then everyone will have the fact that you recommended this learning to them in their Cultural Navigator instance under latest posts. So that's the linear pathing to learning. I want to share with you one more element, which is the Cultural Navigator monthly activity snapshot. And this is loaded into every administrator's account of the clients that we have that hold licenses to the Cultural Navigator. This monthly activity snapshot identifies the trends that you're experiencing with your population, your employee population. And so it identifies the total number of enrollees in the Cultural Navigator, the total logins, and then the average login per user. It tells you the top enrollments by function and by location. And then based on the total number of enrollments, it also identifies how many of your population have completed their COI, which language they completed it in. You can also see the top 5 enrolled learning paths, what is interesting to them, and then the top 5 visited countries. In the bottom right-hand side, you also identify the network usage, so how many connections people have made, how many people are following subject matter experts, and the number of teams that have been formed within the Cultural Navigator are all provided for you inside of this monthly activity snapshot. And these are auto-uploaded on a monthly basis to the administrator's account. All right, and so the last point I want to bring up that will segue us into the Cultural Navigator itself with Louisa is that we have recommended messaging to targeted employee populations, and this really gets us into the strategies. How do we leverage the Cultural Navigator and the elements within the Cultural Navigator to get people to utilize the learning platform more frequently and engage with it more deeply? And so we have a couple of different taglines for the individual contributors, for the mid-level leaders, and for leaders. And again, this presentation will be posted on tmcorp.com, so at any time you're able to go back to these slides and see some of these taglines. So let me hand it over to Louisa, who is going to show us really how we've targeted some specific geographies in our in the Cultural Navigator. So, Louisa?
Hi, everyone. It's Louisa. Thank you, Lynn. And I am Louisa, the content editor at the Cultural Navigator. I'm just going to share with you a demo of the Doing Business in South Africa Learning Path, which is one of 18 Doing Business in web courses on the Cultural Navigator. Now, you can get to it either by clicking here on the Learning Path link on the center of the front page of the Cultural Navigator, or you can go up to the top right and click on the Learning tab, select Activities, and then when it takes you to the Activities page, which includes all of the different media and types of activities we have at the Cultural Navigator, you'll be able to select learning paths. Sorry, my machine's going a little bit slow today. Let me click that again. Sorry, it seems like I'm having a little bit of a technical problem. There we go. Now, on the left-hand side, you'll see, here we're in the activities section. On the left-hand side, you'll see the Learning Paths tab here. You can select that, and then you can search for the Doing Business in South Africa Learning Path, or indeed any of the other learning paths that we have here. And we have 40. So here is the Doing Business in South Africa Learning Path. And this learning path includes a basic facts module, which is interactive, a business interactions module, which is also interactive, a business interactions quiz, working with module, which is interactive, and a link to South Africa's country guide so the user can do a gap analysis and read more extensively about doing business in South Africa from the country guide. And then the last step is a final exam. Today I'm going to walk you through steps 1, 3, 5, and 6, which is the interactive basic facts module, the basic facts quiz, the South Africa gap analysis, and the final exam. At any point, as Lynn pointed out earlier, at any point during the learning paths, users can check the progress by clicking on the progress button on the top right of the screen. When they click on it, it displays all of the steps in the learning paths and the date they were completed or if they still need to be completed. And you can close out of that and go back to the learning path. Now, this is the first step, the basic facts module. And the first slide in this module is about South Africa's geography with some general information about where the country is, how big it is, which countries border it. And you can click on any of these 3 flag pins to read about the 3 major cities in South Africa, Johannesburg, Pretoria, and Cape Town, their populations, locations, their major industries. So it gives details on those. On the next slide of the Basic Facts modules, you can click on any of the 5 icons on this slide to read more about the country's population, religion, industries, trade relationships, and the country's GDP. Slide 3 in this module is about South Africa's history. When the user clicks on one of the circles on the timeline, they'll get information on important historical events. The first one is about when Europeans first arrived, then the beginning of apartheid, the end of apartheid, and this year's death of Nelson Mandela and the general elections that just took place in the country. The final slide is an interactive quiz with questions about South Africa's currency, climate, public holidays, languages, and the best style of clothes to wear in a business setting. Every time the user selects an answer, an item appears on the packing checklist to the right. Okay, so you can see how it generates the answers on the packing checklist. Okay. And that completes this basic facts module of the South Africa Learning Path. If you want to return to the learning path, on the top right there is a link. Click on that. It'll take you back to the learning path. Now we're going to jump straight to step 3 of the learning path, which is the business interactions quiz. It's 10 questions long, and it requires users to answer questions about the business interactions module, which directly precedes the quiz. So these are questions about business interactions, and you need 8 out of 10 in order to pass to the next level. So I'm just going to answer some of these questions here to show you how it generates. Okay. And then submit, and it tells you, well, of course I got 100%. You need to get 80% in order to go back. When you finish the quiz, you can click the link again on the top right to return to the learning path. Now I'm just going to jump again straight to step 5, which is the gap analysis with South Africa. And this one allows users to click the link here on the step 5 step description. When you click there on the link, it takes you to the South Africa country page within the country guide section. And as you can see here, there's a map of South Africa. Underneath the map, this is just full of really great information about everything you need to know about South Africa's history, business culture, what you need to know about interacting in the business section and the business setting, meeting, managing, hiring, negotiating, inclusion practices. This is all proprietary content, these categories here on the left. Every category is filled with subcategories about the topics. So you can learn about conversation patterns, for example, teams, and they're all here on the left, so you can navigate that way by clicking on the links on the left, and then within the sections you can go to the drop-down menu and really learn everything you need to know about interacting or working with South Africans in the business sphere in the country. And it's full of really great proprietary research done by our South Africa subject matter expert. So this is very extensive, and it just covers a very wide range of topics. To the right you can see the COM wheel. When you click on this, it will take you to South Africa's country norms. There's a pop-up box where you can read a list of South Africa's preferences within the 3 dimensions: interaction style, thinking style, and sense of self. If you want to read further on it, more background information, you can click View Report on the top right, and it will take you to a detailed listing of all of the different continua within the 3 dimensions. And if you scroll down, you can read really extensive debrief about every single one of the preferences within that dimension. You can also do, the point of this step actually is to do the cultural gap exercise. Right underneath the COM wheel, it will tell you, if you've done your COI, it will tell you how many cultural gaps you have with South Africa. If you click on the cultural gaps link, it opens a pop-up box that tells you which of your preferences have a gap with the South African preferences, which we just went through. If you want to read a more detailed report, you click View Report on the top right of that little pop-up box, and it will take you to a full rundown of every one of the preferences within the 3 dimensions. Whenever there's a red box, it indicates that you have a gap. So you can just go ahead and click on that red box, and it will open up a debrief of your gap. It will explain some of the challenges you might face due to that gap, and then you can also click on the resources. And you can read, there's that information for every single one of the preference gaps you have with South Africa. As you can see, this box on the right, you can click on it to download a full report. You can also compare with colleagues, countries, and functions, so you can do a comparative analysis, which is also really extensive. Now, if you want, when you've done that, after you've done the gap analysis, you can go back to the Doing Business in South Africa Country Guide by just going ahead and clicking on the tab on the top of your browser, which will take you right back, because the gap analysis that you clicked on opens up in a new window. So you just go back to the South Africa, Doing Business in South Africa Learning Path tab. And after the gap analysis, which was step 5, there is a final exam. The final exam has 20 questions long, and it covers everything the user just learned after completing all of the steps in the Doing Business in South Africa Learning Path. They need to answer 80% of the 20 questions correctly in order to pass. And these questions are really extensive about everything from timelines, the characteristics of good managers and employees in South Africa, to communication styles, to general business entertainment etiquette. So again, you need to answer 20% of the questions in order to pass that. When you're done, you can click on Return to the Learning Path, and the progress bar up here should indicate that you have completed 100% of the learning path. So that brings us to the end of the demonstration of the Doing Business in South Africa Learning Path, and I'd like to hand it back to Lynn to discuss strategies.
Great, thanks, Louisa.
Sure.
So a couple of different thoughts for you as you think about the different strategies that could be employed to generate interest and generate usage of the Cultural Navigator inside of your organization. We have a series of banner ads that we have designed that can be used in your organizational intranet, can be used as email footers, to draw people into the Cultural Navigator. We also allow for a client-specific branded landing page. So you see here as an example is the Reed Elsevier landing page where they customize the language of the introduction of the Cultural Navigator to be specific to their organizational imperatives, their organizational goals and objectives, and why they feel it's important for their employees to access the Cultural Navigator. Couple of other examples here. We'll give you an example of Dow Chemical Company, who is a client of using the Cultural Navigator as well. And they specifically highlight some very interesting concepts inside of their organizational structure in order to make the Cultural Navigator relevant to their population. It tells you very specific if you're a first-time user and how to get started. It also directs them to a video that helps individuals kind of see how the Cultural Navigator works and how they can access it. Let's move into another client of ours. Nike uses the Cultural Navigator in a very different way and kind of approaches the Cultural Navigator in a different way. And they kind of structure it in a what, why, who, and how format on the left-hand side, and then categorize the types of learning in different elements in the columns there on the right-hand side. So assess, learn, explore, and connect. And so that's the kind of approach that Nike takes to make sure that the Cultural Navigator is relevant for their employee population. We also have another client that we'd like to highlight, and that is MetLife, and give you two recent examples of how they stimulated the Cultural Navigator usage. One is that they instituted a demo prior to actual training so that individuals could get familiar with the Cultural Navigator, and the result of that really was that the user report reflected multiple logins happened and occurred before the training session even happened, which is a wonderful, wonderful result and the ideal and desired result as well. The other thing that we've recently designed, and we've designed this for a number of different initiatives within our organization, is a scavenger hunt. And really it's a learning opportunity for individuals to explore the different elements of learning that are within the Cultural Navigator, but we give it a competitive edge and a competitive element. So give them a scavenger hunt so participants have to look at different elements and different categories of content. So we have some examples like how do you say nice to meet you in Arabic. Another examples is where's my audio seal ID brief. And then in these facilitated sessions we have them not only reveal the answer to the question or to the concept that they were asked to look into, but also be instructional to everyone else in the session to help other people within the organization understand how to go about finding this kind of content inside the Cultural Navigator. The last example we want to provide you is with TSystems, which is a Deutsche Telekom organization. And TSystems invited us to contribute to their initiative, specifically Transformation 2015 initiative. And this is the messaging that we helped develop within their intranet, where they gave quantitative feedback, not only on the sessions that we designed and developed for them, but also in the on the Cultural Navigator itself and some of the pilots that we initiated within their organizational structure. You also see a link on the very bottom. We're not going to show you that video today, but you are welcome to click that link. This is an open web video, and it gives you an idea of the way that this organization integrated the Cultural Navigator and cultural competence as a whole inside of their specific work Transformation 2015 initiative. And the last thing I'd like to give you as a strategy that has worked within our client organizations is kind of a divided approach. So look at training both in channel champions or educating evangelists within your organization. And you can do both, but we have found that organizations typically are looking at one approach or the other. One on the left-hand side is called channel champions, and the objective there is to develop specialists with a small group of champions inside an organization that has deep knowledge And they are really the center of excellence around the Cultural Navigator and can be utilized for conducting webinars and educating others within the organization on how the Cultural Navigator works. And we have a curriculum there that helps guide you through what that looks like. On the right-hand side, you see the other strategy, which is educating evangelists. And the objective there would be to spread the word with a large group of evangelists. So we want to get as wide as possible within the organizational structure. And you see the curriculum design there, and it's meant to be for as broad a group as possible. Now, we specifically designed both of these solutions to fit in with the gold and the platinum level licenses. And on an annual basis, gold and platinum level license holders receive 2 free webinars. So this is a design that we have developed to maximize those 2 free webinars, either to develop channel champions and have both webinars focused on those channel champions, which is a small population, or educate evangelists and do the largest population possible within those 2 free webinars. Okay, so really the focus now is to move back into the Cultural Navigator, and in fact Louisa is going to take us into another area of the Cultural Navigator that is specifically devoted to international assignments. So let me pass it to Louisa.
Hello everyone, it's me again. Now I'm going to demo for you the Preparing for Your International Assignment learning path. And this learning path is one of 4 that were recently released in the International Assignment topic area. They can be found in the Learning Path section or in the topic area section. So you already know how to get to the learning paths. In order to get to the International Assignment topic area, you can click on the Learning tab on the top right of your screen, go down to Select Topic Areas. It'll take you to the topic areas screen, then you can go to International Assignment. Now today I'm going to walk you through the Preparing for Your International Assignment learning path, which is right here. I'll just click on that. And this learning path has 6 steps made up of articles, interactive e-learning modules that generate a report at the end, and a video. Now, the first step of the Preparing for Your International Assignment learning path is an e-learning module called Your Goals and Ambitions While Abroad. This module begins with an introduction of and instructions on how to complete the module. So on this slide, after you read that, the user is asked to rate each goal of their upcoming international assignment by selecting a number of stars. The more stars the user selects next to a goal, the more important it is. So you can see here. When they click, it generates a pop-up. When they select either 4 or 5 stars, they have the option of adding an action plan. When they click on Add an Action Plan, it generates a pop-up on which they can create a separate action plan by filling in what their goals are into these fields and why, and how and when they want to achieve them. Okay, for example, okay, then they can save it by clicking here. It'll take them back to the slide. The next slide continues the exercise. Again, they can fill in the number of stars and add an action plan if they like, which they can then save. On the following slide, the user can add their own additional topic area if one of the ones that they were thinking about wasn't covered. They can click that, and then they can also rate its importance by adding an action plan. Okay. On the final slide of the module, users can click the print button on the bottom right-hand side to generate a copy of their answers and print it if they like, which they can keep with them throughout their international trip and assignment. To return to the Preparing for Your International Assignment learning path, just click on the link on the top right of the screen. The next step of this learning path is an article called Pre-Departure Checklist, and this lists all the major things to take care of before leaving for an international assignment from making sure your immunizations are up to date to photocopying important documents, ordering extra prescriptions, and these are things that may not be immediately obvious, especially for someone who's moving abroad for work for the first time. So after they've read that, you can click to return to learning path. The third step here is strategies for making a transition. It's another interactive module, and this helps users identify concerns about their trip and provides them tips on how to get through them. So when they start the interactive part of the learning path, they can select a sentence that best describes how they feel about a different topic. This one is language, as you can see here on this slide. And once the user clicks on the sentence that best describes their feelings on the topic, a pop-up appears containing an audio file that they can listen to about the topic. For example, this one. And they can pause it or stop it at any point, X out when they're done listening to it. And each page following this in the module follows the same format with the topics language, social network, food, housing, adjusting, family safety and health included. And as you can see, they all follow the same format where if the user clicks on any of these, they get an audio debrief about the topic. Unless they select the first one, which indicates that they're fine with that topic. Okay. So here we have finished this one. They can return to the learning path by clicking on the top right link. The fourth step of preparing for your international assignment learning path is a video called Cross-Cultural Adjustment. And this gives viewers an idea of how to deal with some of the challenges of moving abroad, alone or with family. So you can click on that there. And you can pause that and return at any point. You can also download it. Go, and this is, 6-minute long video. When you're done watching that, you can return to the learning path. On the same lines as the video topic about adjusting to moving abroad, the next step is step 5, which is moving abroad with children. And this is an article, and it discusses how disruptive an international move can be for kids, and it describes how to help them adjust both before and after the move and gives really helpful tips for that. So to make the transition with the family as smooth as possible, which is something that is really a big concern for people who are moving abroad for an extensive period of time with children. All right. Now I'm going to return to the learning path. The final step in this learning path allows the user to either go directly to the next suggested learning path in the international assignment topic area, which is working in a new country. They can click on that, or they can click to return to the international assignment topic area, which will just take them back, and then they can select any of the other learning paths within that topic area if they wish to do so. So that brings me to the end of the demo for preparing for your international assignment learning path, and I will hand it back to Lynn to wrap up. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Louisa. Excellent. So we're really excited to share those two elements with you. Those are brand new, both recently deployed within the Cultural Navigator. And a couple of other thoughts I want to make sure you have in your mind. But let's ask a question here first. So our next poll is, which strategy would you like more information about? We have identified a couple of different strategies that our clients have used, including banner ads and quarterly email campaigns, building your organization's Cultural Navigator login page, customizing a message to drive usage, or developing channel champions and or evangelists. And if there's other, go ahead and type that into the question box for us. All right, so let's take a look at Okay, yeah, excellent. Banner ads and quarterly email campaigns. We're right there with you. We've designed those in the last 4 months and are really excited to deploy those. So thanks. We look forward to working with those of you that identified that as your most important. Thanks for that. I also wanted to move into how the Cultural Navigator can be accessed. It can be accessed from many electronic devices. It's specifically accessed at theculturalnavigator.com, but we've also developed a kind of a marketing access point called explore.culturalnavigator.com, and that's really maximized for smartphones and tablets. And specifically designed to give overviews of all of the elements within the Cultural Navigator. So you don't have to actually log in to learn more about the Cultural Navigator. Great opportunity to share the tool. And then I want to also just give you some faces to all the names that you hear about within the Cultural Navigator team. We have a whole team ready and supportive of client-specific requirements. And so Jay and Sheetal and Susan, Sean, Louisa, Peter and Lakeisha are all standing by, myself included, to support the clients in how they not only like to engage with the Cultural Navigator, but also evangelize the Cultural Navigator within your own organization. 2 more questions for you to keep you involved. What's the most exciting thing to you about the Cultural Navigator? Is it a modern look, the ease of navigation, customizable user interface, the updated COI, or collaborative learning tools? Let's take a look. Ease of navigation and customizable user interface. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. We have one more question that looks at the opposite of that, and that is what is currently, or what do you think will be a big concern you'll face in launching the tool inside the organization? Is it having marketing materials to support the launch, perhaps getting the message out, driving usage of the Cultural Navigator, or answering questions about the Cultural Navigator? Again, go ahead and type it into the question box. And let's take a look. Results are driving usage. Yep, it continues to be the #1 challenge for our clients, and thus the topic for this month's Cultural Navigator webinar. So thank you for that. I wanted to make sure that you understood the 4 key pillars that the Cultural Navigator was built on, that it's personal, the content and learning is specifically designed to be generated at the individual level. It's collaborative and providing access to users, for users to connect with others. It's relevant to the organizations by allowing for customized content at the organizational level, and it's representative of all of our product offerings. We have a couple of upcoming webinars that we'd like to just make sure that you're aware of. In September, our focus is on the Strategic Performance Framework in Action. And this is a specific focus on our new book, and I'll be joined by my co-authors, Karen Welch, who's a professor of global negotiations at Thunderbird, and then Jörg Schmitz, who is a practicing anthropologist and been associated with TMC for many, many years. And then in October, Bettina Neidhardt, our client strategist located in Europe, will talk about cultural competence strategy implementation. And so we want to thank you for joining us today. We'll move into our question and answer period at this point, so we'll stop our recording now.